Truth Seekers. Welcome back to Combat Ufology with Argo. Tonight we're going to cover the second pillar. We're going to cover Raymond E. Fowler. He was born in Salem, Massachusetts in 1933. On November 11th, he is an American author and a UFO researcher. Fowler, he is best known for his UFO investigations and books focusing primarily on UFO sightings and close encounters in the New England area of the United States, including the Betty Andreasson Luca alien abduction case. That's one of the more famous ones that he's known for. Fowler, he served as a director of scientific investigations for MUFON and authored an older edition of the MUFON Field Investigators Manual. He also served as the scientific associate for the Center for UFO Studies. Fowler had also served as an associate member and eventually chairman of NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon. Later in life, Fowler wrote about being an abductee himself, sharing this information most in depth in his autobiographical book, UFO Testament: Anatomy of an Abductee. During an interview with Rosemary Ellen Gully, Fowler listed some of his abduction experience that seemed to correlate with other abductee testimonies, such as Betty and Barney Hill abduction and Betty Andreasson Luca. Fowler's claim of being an abductee and UFO research as a whole were not always welcomed by his family members because of their religious beliefs on the subject of UFOs. Fowler's extensive investigation in the UFO field lessened after the publication of The Watchers and The Watchers 2, in which Fowler initially acknowledged his UFO abduction experience. He continued writing books on the subject, however, including his own experiences as well as local investigations he had not previously published. Here is a list of books that Raymond E. Fowler wrote, from the first book that he wrote all the way to the most recent one. UFOs Interplanetary Visitors, 1974. The Andreasson Affair, 1979. Casebook of a UFO Investigator, 1981. The Andreasson Affair, Phase 2, 1983. The Watchers, 1991. The Allagash Abductions, 1993. The Watchers 2, 1995. The Andreasson Legacy, 1997. The Melchizedek Connection, 2001. UFO Testament: Anatomy of an Abductee, 2002. Synchrophile Lincoln, 2004. That was his last book, Synchrophile Lincoln, 2004. Something important to note about the Andreasson Affair, which is specific to the Betty Luca case, was that the foreword in that book was written by a J. Allen Hynek. For those that don't know, J. Allen Hynek was an American astronomer, a professor, and a ufologist. He's best remembered for his UFO research. Hynek acted as a scientific advisor to UFO studies undertaken by the U.S. Air Force under three projects: Project Sign, 1947 to 1949, Project Grudge, 1949 to 1951, and the more famous of the three, Project Blue Book, 1952 to 1969. Something else that's interesting about J. Allen Hynek was in the later years, he conducted his own independent UFO research, developing the Close Encounter Classification System. He was among the first people to conduct scientific analysis of reports and especially of trace evidence purportedly left by UFOs. All right, Argo, will you let us know why Raymond E. Fowler and Betty Luca constitute the second pillar?
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for who's watched the first pillar of Combat Ufology with Argo. I hope everybody's been a good student and got the book or versed themselves thoroughly with the story, and that they understand the key points that make them the first pillar. So now we're going to discuss Raymond Fowler and his extensive work. Now, I'm not going to go into any great detail about any of his work. What a person needs to understand is that Ray Fowler was a researcher that started, obviously way back in the 40s. And his work is so extensive that his work was nearly standalone for 20 years in the depth that his investigations took him to. But as far as the pillar, This is what's important to know. So when Betty was young and she was a teenager, she had been brought home by her boyfriend, and there was an abductee event that happened right there in the middle of her house with all of her family there. And the book starts out with it, the Andreasson affair. You'll love the book. Get it, educate yourself. And the incredible implication that comes out of this first story, this one of probably the most intriguing story, if not for one more, and that is that time seems to have been subdued. Now, don't know whether it was slowed, but it seemed as if time were stopped in Betty's case. So if that isn't enough to entice you to go and find out what actually happened in that work, then I don't know what else to tell you. This is real abductees undergoing the first tool that we learned from Dr. Simon is regression. It fleshes out the actual truth of an experience. And the probably the most prominent thing that happened to Betty involves the direct understanding of what the person is to take away from the pillar work of Ray Fowler. And that is this. Betty at some point is taken to see, quote, the one. So just let that rattle around in you for a minute. These are in charge grays. These are all sorts of other beings who are all excited about Betty's going to be taken to meet the one. So Ray and his team of people who attack this abduction experience, which is not like today, which is some paid MUFON person who literally had to pay for their book, pay for their training, and all they have to have is an interest, and they're an investigator. These are the people that investigated Betty's case: an aerospace engineer, a solar physicist, an electrical engineer, a communications specialist, a professional hypnotist, and a professional psychiatrist, and Mr. Fowler himself. So what they found is that the aliens were aware that him and his team were actively tinkering inside Betty's memories, trying to figure out what all's happening to her, what the aliens are doing, etc. And they realized they had to protect this memory of the meeting of the one. So at some point, they're having this weeks long battle trying to get through this wall that the aliens have created of just absolute blur and confusion. It physically affects her. There's extreme mental pain and body pain, and they absolutely cannot get through it. Showing you that if the aliens want to hide something in your brain, they can. So what you take away from the pillar system with Raymond Fowler's work is that business continues as usual from the Betty and Barney case, and that if there is something particular that the aliens show you during an abduction, or maybe you just witness something and they don't want you to ever remember it, you'll never remember it. Because the only tool that we have to flesh out the actual truth was not even able to do it at that time. Now, I won't say that it wasn't able to be gotten through, because in Betty Luca's last work before she died, Lifting the Veil, she wrote a book about what happened when she met the one. But here's the problem. We know that anything that's not used, any memory that's retrieved without regression, is absolute, just, you can just guarantee it's a lie because it's a mask memory. And we're going to learn more about mask memories and things as we delve into Pillar 3 with Whitley Strieber and others. The main thing you need to understand is that if the aliens can get in your mind, make you live an event, an hours-long event, and then hide the fact completely and purely from you. Ray Fowler, in later work in Watchers and Watchers 2, confesses that he too has been a contactee in his life. So while he was still one of the early pioneers of fashioning the tool of regression, he felt that by the time they had done these investigations with Betty Luca and many others, including the Allagash and the happenings and all of that, and many, many others, went under regression himself because he understood the tool well enough. And that tool, handed down to him from Dr. Ben Simon and the way he approached stuff, would then later be picked up by the most incredible researcher for my money in history, Bud Hopkins, and many others, Dave Jacobs, Pulitzer Prize winner Professor John Mack, and others. So once again, I want to thank people for showing up for the show and passing it around. It's pretty obvious that people are showing it around. And once again, this is the truth. This is not my work. This is the truth of 70 years laid out by people who are smarter than all of us, because most of us watch 99% pure trash all day. Once you're getting here with me and Lee, is you're getting the truth that no one wants to tell. Great researchers still alive right now who rub shoulders with the greats, like Paula Harris and others, are not teaching this. They're having master classes right now where they teach you gobbledygook. Stay here for the truth. More pillars are coming. We're building our base, and when we get through with our 7 pillars, we are going to take to task every fool in this subject. We'll use their own words and their own actions to humiliate them. And if they are not humiliating, then they are below even self-respect. We will get nothing but the truth here, and we'll go through people's works that you can go and read them yourself and come to the same conclusions I have, because the conclusions are obvious. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. And stay tuned for more combat ufology. We're trying to get the pillars out as fast as we can. We want a certain quality. And once we get on the other side of the 7 pillars, so that we have a foundation, so that as the fools begin to speak, we can refer them back to our better judgment using the work of the past of great people that is so more current now than it was even 10 years ago. But those are discussions for later pillars. For now, you just need to know that if you're going to study this, you need to go and read at least the Andreasson Affair. I would advise 4 books. The Andreasson Affair, the Andreasson Affair 2, which is an incredible book, and Watchers 2. And Watchers 2 is also an incredible book. I don't know how the second books wind up being better than the first. That doesn't usually happen, but they're incredible works. And, they're cheap enough. You're talking about if you bought all 4 of them, probably cost you $100. That's $100 to know an incredible piece of truth. Because there's only one place you get the truth. And that is from interactions between human beings and alien beings. And then you have to have the tool of regression, because they'll make you think you're talking to Mary Poppins on the Lollipop Highway. If you like fairies, well, you're seeing fairies. If you like goblins, you're seeing goblins. You like Bigfoots, you're seeing Bigfoots. You're seeing whatever it is that keeps you under control. So I guess that'll wrap up Pillar 2.